For the best experience, please use headphones or listen in a quiet environment. Why failure is the secret to success. Life-changing lessons you need to hear. What if I told you that the most significant turning points in life often start with failure? Think about it. Have you ever felt like you've hit rock bottom, only to realize later that it was the very foundation you needed to rebuild and rise stronger? Failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of it. And if you've been avoiding it, running from it, or hiding from it, you're robbing yourself of one of the greatest teachers life has to offer. Today, we're going to dive deep into why falling down is not just okay, but essential for your growth, for your evolution as a person. By the end of this talk, I'm confident you'll have a completely different perspective on failure and a game plan for turning it into fuel for your success. Let's start with a question. When was the last time you truly pushed yourself out of your comfort zone? And when you did you stumble? Did you fall? Did you question why you even tried in the first place? You see, failure can feel like a crushing weight. But then it reveals itself as a lesson, as an opportunity, as a doorway to something greater than you ever imagined. Think about this. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. That's a quote from Henry Ford. And isn't it true? Every failure is a chance to reset, refocus, and realign. But most people don't see it that way. Why? Because we're conditioned to avoid failure. We're taught that it's something to be ashamed of, something to hide. But what if we could reframe failure as feedback? What if every fall was simply a step forward? Action item No. 1, redefine failure. Ask yourself, what have I labeled as failure in my life? Was it really failure, or was it feedback? Write down 3 moments when you thought you failed, and for each one, identify the lesson it taught you. This simple exercise can transform how you view setbacks. Now, let's explore why failure is essential for growth. Picture this. A baby learning to walk. Do they fall? Of course. Do they cry? Sometimes. But do they give up? Never. Why? Because falling is part of learning to walk. Yet somewhere along the way as adults we forget this truth. We start to fear the fall. We start to believe that falling means we're not good enough. But then, the most successful people in the world remind us otherwise. Let me share a story with you. There's a man who started his career by being fired from a newspaper because, in their words, he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. That man? Walt Disney. Imagine if he had let that failure define him. Imagine if he had given up. In his book The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, the author reminds us, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Take a moment to let that sink in. What if the challenges in your path weren't barriers, but stepping stones? Real-world example. Think of Oprah Winfrey. Early in her career, she was demoted from her role as a news anchor because she was deemed unfit for television. But she didn't let that obstacle stop her. Instead, she used it as fuel to become one of the most influential figures in the world. Action item number 2. Shift your perspective. Think about a time when you faced rejection or failure. Now ask yourself, what if this wasn't a failure at all? What if it was preparation? What if it was refining you for something better? Write down how you can reframe that moment in a way that empowers you. Here's the truth. Growth requires discomfort. It requires stepping into the unknown, taking risks, and sometimes falling flat on your face. But each time you fall, you're learning. Each time you stumble, you're growing. The discomfort you're feeling, that's the price of transformation. One of the most powerful reminders of this comes from Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. Dweck explains, the passion for stretching yourself and sticking to it, even or especially when it's not going well, is the hallmark of the growth mindset. Real-world example. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, was rejected by 12 publishers before finally getting her big break. Imagine if she had quit after the first rejection. Her perseverance embodies the growth mindset. Recent studies from the field of psychology also reinforce the value of failure. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, conducted a study on desirable difficulties. The study found that individuals who encounter moderate challenges while learning tend to retain information better than those who face none. This phenomenon occurs because the struggle forces the brain to engage deeper cognitive processes, creating stronger neural connections. Real-world application? Consider Serena Williams. Her early career losses didn't define her. Instead, they sharpened her game and her resolve, ultimately helping her become one of the greatest tennis players in history. Let's look at another example from the world of business. Howard Schultz, the man behind Starbucks, approached over 200 investors before securing funding to expand his coffee empire. Imagine being turned down that many times. Most of us would have given up after the first 10 rejections. But Schultz believed in his vision and understood that each no brought him closer to the yes that would change everything. Today, Starbucks is a global brand, and Schultz's story is a testament to persistence and learning from failure. One common misconception is that failure defines your ability or intelligence. Many people mistakenly believe that failing at something means they're inherently bad at it. This idea often stems from a fixed mindset, where individuals see their abilities as unchangeable. But science tells us otherwise. In a groundbreaking study by Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck, students who were taught that intelligence can be developed through effort showed significantly higher academic improvement than those who believed their intelligence was fixed. Overcoming this misconception requires adopting a growth mindset, embracing challenges, persisting through obstacles, and viewing effort as the path to mastery. Another frequent mistake is equating failure with finality. Too many people give up entirely after a single setback, thinking it's the end of the road. Take the story of Colonel Sanders, the founder of KFC. He was rejected over 1,000 times before someone agreed to partner with him on his chicken recipe. His story reminds us that failure is rarely final. It's only final if you stop trying. Action item number 3. Embrace the process. Set a goal this week that scares you, something you've been putting off because you're afraid you might fail. And if you do fail, celebrate it. Yes, celebrate it, because it means you're trying. It means you're growing. Another common mistake is focusing too much on the fear of judgment. People often avoid taking risks because they're worried about what others will think. But here's the truth. Most people are too focused on their own lives to dwell on your failures. In fact, when you're courageous enough to try and fail, you often inspire others. Consider the story of Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. She openly shares how she failed at several jobs before starting her billion-dollar company. Her willingness to embrace and share her failures has not only built her brand, but also inspired millions of aspiring entrepreneurs. Action item number 4. Overcome the fear of judgment. The next time you hesitate to try something new, remind yourself, people are far less critical of you than you think. Focus on your own growth, not on others' opinions. Write down one risk you've been avoiding because of fear of judgment and commit to taking it this week. Another misconception people often have is that failure is purely negative. But failure is a neutral event. It's our interpretation of it that gives it meaning. Psychologists often refer to this as cognitive framing. For example, 2 students might fail an exam. One might see it as evidence that they're incapable, while the other might view it as an opportunity to identify areas for improvement. To shift your cognitive frame, ask yourself, what's one positive thing I can take away from this experience? Let's turn to sports for another example. Michael Jordan, widely regarded as one of the greatest basketball players of all time, has spoken openly about his failures. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Jordan's ability to see failure as part of the journey, rather than the end of it, is a lesson for all of us. Do not fear failure, but rather fear not trying, said Jack Canfield, the co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. This quote is a powerful reminder to focus on action rather than outcome. Consider actors like Meryl Streep, who was once told she was too ugly to succeed in Hollywood. Her willingness to keep going, even after harsh criticism, led her to become one of the most celebrated actors in history. A fascinating study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology examined resilience in children who experienced early failures. It revealed that those who were encouraged to see failures as learning opportunities developed higher levels of grit and perseverance later in life. The takeaway? Encouraging a mindset that views setbacks as stepping stones can have a profound long-term impact. Consider the story of Elon Musk, who faced multiple failed rocket launches before achieving success with SpaceX. His failures didn't deter him, they refined his vision. Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. Winston Churchill said that. Think about it. Success isn't permanent, and neither is failure. They're both temporary states. What matters is your courage to keep moving forward. Simon Sinek, in his famous TED Talk, said, "Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion." This is particularly true when we're faced with failure. Passion allows us to persevere, to see beyond the immediate setbacks, and to understand that the journey is more important than the destination. Action item number 5. Detach from the outcome. Start a new project or pursue a new goal with one rule. Focus on the effort, not the result. If you give it your all, you've already succeeded, regardless of the outcome. Now, let's get practical. How do you turn failure into growth? Here are some steps you can take. 1. Reflect. After any setback, ask yourself, what happened, what went wrong, and most importantly, what can I learn from this? 2. Adjust. Take what you've learned and tweak your approach. Remember, failure is feedback. 3. Try again. Don't let fear paralyze you. The quicker you try again, the quicker you grow. Failure is not the end, it's a comma, not a period. It's a part of your story, not the whole story. And the more you embrace it, the more unstoppable you become. In Daring Greatly by Brené Brown, she writes, "Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome." Consider this. Steve Jobs was fired from the company he founded, Apple. Yet he came back stronger, revolutionized the tech industry, and cemented his legacy. That courage to be vulnerable and take risks shaped his story. I want to leave you with this. Life is not about avoiding the fall. It's about learning how to rise. It's about building the resilience to stand up again and again, no matter how many times you stumble. Now here's your challenge. Pick one of the action items we discussed today and commit to it. Maybe it's redefining failure, shifting your perspective, embracing the process, or detaching from the outcome. Whatever it is, take one step today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. And before you go, let me ask you this. Did you learn something new today? Did something resonate with you? If it did, hit the subscribe button, tap that notification bell, and like this video. Why? Because every time you do, you're helping us reach more people who need to hear this message. And it's a way for us to keep creating content that empowers and inspires. Finally, I want to hear from you. What topics do you want us to cover next? What challenges are you facing that, if solved, could make this world a better place? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Together, we can grow, learn, and make an impact.